Hello, my name is Vanessa Gorman. I'm a professor of ancient history at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I have been making trees of Greek prose authors since 2014, and I thought I would make a series of videos to help introduce you to how to make trees on your own in Greek or another language, although I'm going to use Greek, using the Arethusa program on the Perseids project. This is the homepage of the Perseids project. Notice that it aims to support scholarship for students and members of the public at all levels of competence, and this is something I'm very committed to, making sure that even beginning students can learn to use these tools to improve their knowledge and make the knowledge more accessible, make the languages more accessible to everyone. It's a free and open online environment. They don't charge you to use it, but they do ask you that anything that you produce from it, you make accessible for them. So for example, I have a massive database of syntactically analyzed Greek, which I have made available both through Perseids and on my own GitHub site. If you poke around on this page, you read more, you'll see how to interact with documents. There's a lot of background of some of the things you can do here in the funding sources that they've been able to use over the years. Digital editions. Here you see they've got all kinds of interesting things. Here's my tree bank collection, for example. If you go here, you'll see what I've been doing. Matthew Harrington has done a bunch of tree banks in Latin. There's an original database that includes a lot of other people's work in poetry especially. And go back to the main page, libraries and tools. So there's a lot of things on here as well. You have access to the big lexicon, the LSJ, different editing tools. So poke around. You should see what's available here. What you need to do to start off is two things. One is you need to get logged in to Perseids. I should say there are some pretty nice instructions of various sorts here on this instructions page through Perseids, which you might want to play around with. They're kind of hit and miss depending, but this will help you. But mostly you want to go to the login page. So if I go back here and read more, create an account or log in, this is going to take you to my page, but you'll get a page that looks like this. And what you need to do is use one of your social accounts. They accept Google, Twitter, AOL, or Yahoo. So I just created a Gmail account myself and use it to create an account here so they can keep track of who's using it, and it will save your material for you. It's all done online. You don't have to put it on your computer at all. So once you've signed in, let's see, I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to sign in with my account. It's going to automatically sign me in, and you'll get a dashboard. My dashboard has lots of stuff on it because I've been doing this for a long time. You're going to not have anything here, but notice you have various things you can do, text alignments and such. What we're interested in is this new tree bank annotation. So what I'm going to have you do is click on that button, and it will think for a second and bring you to this page. Now, there's various ways you can import text, and I'll make a separate video on different ways to import text. I'm going to do it one of the simpler ways this time, which is if you click here, what you need is you can just take Greek or Latin and put it in this box. Just cut and paste it in this box. Okay. I'm going to go here. There's a bank called Captains. Available works are here, so you can see the environment. You can see in ancient Greek and lots of different things available. That's in Nemo. I'm just going to start typing Xenophon. I'm working on Xenophon, so I'll start with Xenophon, getting various different works. I'm going to continue and say Hellenica. There she blows. So you click on Hellenica. Now it's going to ask you what section of this you want. As a rule, you don't want things that are too ginormous. Um, Memory has improved over the years, so now I try to limit my files to less than 500 sentences. A couple hundred sentences is even easier. It depends on your computer and your setup and how fast your internet is. But I'm going to just say book 1, chapter 1 to book 1, chapter 4. That's going to give us a pretty big hunk, actually, based on Xenophon. And then I'm going to say retrieve passage. There it is already. It's coming from Captains. It's already pretty neatly edited in Captains, so they've taken out a lot of the junk that needs to be filtered out to do this well. Then you hit the edit button over here. So I'm going to edit that. It's going to say loading, and you have to give it a few seconds until it's done. Sometimes it takes a little while. This time it didn't. So now it's opened us up to the first sentence. Before you go into this, though, go up to the top right corner and say exit to Perseids. Now it's going to ask you, changes have not been saved. Leave anyway, that's fine. So leave that. And this is what your home looks like. So, sorry, if you click on home, you're now going to have this file here, which is TreeBank. For some reason, they're labeling it pseudo Hellenica. I changed the titles, as you can see. So here's Xenophon Hellenica. This is the exact same file that I've done, but I've changed the title. The way you do that is if you click on this, it goes back in and you can change the title here. I just think it's easier so I can see exactly what's in it. So now you have a sentence list, 50 sentences at a time. Then you can go to next. That'll give you the next 50, etc. So there you go. You can see. Let's start with sentence 1 and open it up and see what you have in the sentence view. Okay, yours is probably not coloring in right now because the first thing you need to do is change a few settings. So if you go to the settings button, the little whatever that's called there, up on the top right, and click on that. You want to make sure, then click on plugin settings. You want to make sure these things are checked off. So you want to activate the default insertion point. That means that when you add a word to the sentence to make it make sense. So if a word is left out and you need to put it back in, an elision, that will put it automatically at the end of the sentence, which solves a lot of problems that you don't need to know about right now. Store preferences is important, and local storage is important because what happens is any changes you make, so if you add a morphology, it will remember that. And it will also remember which forms show up more often so that you don't waste a lot of time. And I'll show you that in a second. Pre-select is what makes the words color in. That's lovely. That's absolutely invaluable. And then click on advanced mode as well. If you have your own Greek keyboard that you like, so for example, I have the Linguist software Greek keyboard and I really like it. So I like to use it. So I have them disable the keyboard mapping for input. If you don't have a Greek keyboard and you're going to use theirs, then leave that unchecked. Make sure you're colorizing by morphology. That's absolutely important. All of this should be good. Save preferences. That all should be there already. And then when you're done, click the settings button again and that will disappear. Okay, now you should be coloring in words. This is one of the brilliant things about this program is that the different parts of speech come in different colors, and so you learn to automatically just glance at them and know that something is wrong because an adverb is the wrong color or a verb is the wrong color. So that's very helpful. So let's explore this page. So this is the work that you downloaded. If you change the title, I'll try. You've got to change this as well, and I'll show you that. This is the sentence number, so I can skip around. I can just say go to sentence 17 and enter, and it goes to sentence 17. I can go all the way to I can go to the next sentence. I can go all the way to the end, so we have 186 sentences in this hunk. That's a very doable size. I'm going to go back to 1. Then let's see what we have. We have, I never use that button, download. I don't use this. What you do use are these tabs. This button on the top right gets you out. This changes your language. These are the tabs you're going to use. These first 4 tabs are what you're going to use. So for example, if you click on the word meta, you have a morphology set up here. I don't know what that came from. We're going to ignore that for now. That is an ADP, which is a preposition, but it's labeled adposition because it fits everything, not just the ones that come before their objects. If I unclick that, so I can click it again to unselect it, or I can hit the escape button to unselect it. And then I look at tauta. We have a lot of choices here. So we have, it's a pronoun. I don't like it just being labeled pronoun. I've actually added morphologies where it's an adjective, and I distinguish between it being used as a pronoun and used as an adjective. Others may disagree with me. This is one of those things. There's a lot of customization you can do. For example, there are certain words that are labeled as adjectives that I think are nouns. They're used substantively most of the time, and they're listed in the LSJ as a substantive meaning as well. And I tend to make them into nouns because I think it's silly to use enemy as an adjective and ally as an adjective, for example. If you see, you've got all kinds of information here. What we have, so here, let me click on Hemirais. This is the part of speech tag that's in the coding. It means it's a noun, it's plural, it's feminine, it's dative, right? That's pretty simple. Adjective, plural, feminine, dative. These are the possible categories depending on what you're looking at. If you want to scroll through the words in a sentence, you use W and you go forward, you use E and you go backwards. As long as you're clicked in the left-hand box. If you're clicked in the right-hand box, that won't work. But that's one way to go move around through the sentence. As you are identifying the morphologies, the more often you pick something, the higher on this list it will be. So for example, husterone probably comes up for you as the noun, which means afterbirth, which is clearly not the most common use of this word. So you see for my list, because it's got my settings, it's pulled the adjective, singular, neuter, accusative to the top because I've chosen it the most times. This is why you changed your settings to save preferences. Because that way you don't have to go scrolling down to the last item. Otherwise, they show up in alphabetical order mostly, or the order they are in the dictionary, in the lexicon, and that can be pretty annoying. So it's important to make sure you get the right form. Sometimes the form shows up twice. I don't know what's going on there. It's just a glitch in the morphological mechanism. Here, clearly, you want Athenai, the city, not the Athenian woman. Ships, again, sometimes you get these glitches where it comes through without a gender or something like that. You just ignore them. If need be, you can put in a gender. I'll show you how to do all that stuff in a bit. I'm just exploring right now. Echo is one of those things where clearly you don't want ka or ko very often. So there it is, echo. I strongly urge you to keep the text of Perseids open at the same time. So in another window, I would open up Perseids, and I would go down to the bottom and open Xenophon, and then open Hellenica Greek. And I usually have this on my second screen. And this way, if you're not sure what a word means, like husterone, you can click on it. It will open up the lexicon box. So husterone here, meaning the afterbirth, is why that comes up first. That's not what we want. We want this. You can click on the LSJ meaning or the middle little meaning. So here's the LSJ meaning, which is just added onto the bottom of your page here, and you can see it means coming after or later. Normally this word is used adverbially to say later. It's often used in the neuter singular in that way. So there's your whole LSJ. If you don't want that so complicated, use the middle little, and that will give you a much shorter meaning. as a student, that was the dictionary I used the most. These are specialty dictionaries for different authors, and you can ignore them where they show up. But clearly, this is a useful tool to have open. I should also mention, if you don't know Perseids, so here we have 111. You can load here the English, and so you can use this as a kind of a cheat to make sure you're on the right track. As you go forward, you can see the next chapter. If you want to see a bigger hunk, just erase the point 2 at the end here and hit enter, and it will give you all of Hellenica 1.1, which you see is quite a lengthy piece. So that's all up to you how you want to do it. But the point is, any of these words you can click on and get the meaning right away, and the longer meaning, because sometimes you really need that longer meaning and the context. So that's all available very easily for you. Let's go back to our text here. In order to actually make a tree, what you do is click on a word. So there's the main verb of the sentence. I clicked on it, it's selected. Now, wherever I click next, it will go. It's not a drag and drop, it is a click and click. So I want that main verb attached to the root of my sentence. So I click there, and there's my main verb. Here's a prepositional phrase. The convention is to take the object of the preposition tauta and hang it on the preposition itself. So there's meta de tauta. So now I have this hanging out in space, but I'm going to attach it to the main verb because that's what it's dependent upon. Likewise, we have many days, not many days, later by not many days. So let's click it here, and you can click it in the sentence, or you can click it on in the main box here, either one. And again, this is dependent on the main verb. Here's your subject. Now you'll click on this and click on the main verb. Now you'll notice that he doesn't show up here at all. So you need to create a new form. This happens a lot with names. It happens with a lot of it just glitches in the morphology, but names especially. So you fill in the part of speech, it's a noun. You fill in the number, it's a singular, masculine, nominative. That's nice and simple because it is nominative. Some of these names that occur in the oblique cases can be a nightmare. Now, next time his name shows up, he'll go up to the top of the list because this nonsense here is going to disappear. Well, it's going to drop down because you're not choosing it. So he's now a noun. Having a few ships, so few modifies nous. Nous is the object of the echon, and the echon hangs on the elthon. So now we're good, right? But we haven't finished everything. We have 3 unused. So I need to highlight this to see what I haven't put in yet. So I haven't put in this preposition. So we're going to hang that here, just like the other prepositions. And it's pink because I haven't used it. So now I want to hang this. He came out of Athens, so that's going to hang on the main verb. And then the last thing is the sentence adverb, as we call them. I will talk about these parts of speech in a bit. Sentence adverb is going to hang on elthon. Okay, so there's our completed sentence. We know we've hung everything because there's 0 unused here. I can unclick this now. You can do various things. You can expand the tree if you want to see it bigger. You can contract the tree, which is how I usually do it. You can flip it around if you like to look at it in this direction. That toggles it back and forth. This will focus you on the root, so it'll center the tree on the root. This is a really good tool, especially on longer sentences. You've lost a word. You're trying to find where in the sentence is now. You click on the word, and then you focus it, and it will put that in the middle of the screen so you can find it. This will just center the tree on the page, and this makes it what they call the perfect width. You can also go back to compact view. Oops. You can also just, use your scroll bar. If you're clicked in this box, you can use your scroll bar to go in and out and get a better view. And then finally, up here where this box is red, that's the save button. It's a good idea to save it fairly often. Okay, so that's going to save and it will tell you when it has saved. If you take too long between, if you walk away and do something and come back a half an hour later and try to save it, it may come up red because you've been logged out. Just open a different window, log in to Perseids again, and then you should be able to come back here and save it. Always save often. Now, what happens if you want to select more than one thing? So you say these weren't already on the verb, and I'd want to hang all these prepositions and this. I can hit Control click and click on multiple items at the same time, and so I could move these all to here at the same time. But oops, I meant to put them on the main verb. I can undo that, come up to the top right again. The undo button is a godsend because you'll forget you have something clicked and you'll click somewhere else and everything will go kaflooey. So undo it, that's fine. But you can always control click, which is useful when you want to do multiple things. Likewise, you have a redo button, which can be useful. Okay, so let's look at all this. First thing I usually do is make the tree. Then I like to start at the first word and go through the morphology. This is correct, it's the preposition. Click W to go to the next word. Now notice it came up only as an adverb. I added it as a conjunction because clearly sometimes it's a conjunction. How do I do that? You simply click here, create new, and then fill in the boxes. Now, if you click an adverb, it will ask you for positive, comparative, superlative, or just nothing. And so for this, clearly it's just nothing. And then you save it, and then you'll have something that says you. Tauta is the pronoun, plural, neuter, accusative. That's pretty clear. That's what it is. We're happy with that. So make sure that's clicked. Not, again, I've had to add this because for some reason in some file it wasn't identifying itself. I like to keep it on the Morpheus version, but I don't think it matters. Polis, that's fine. The adjective, plural, feminine, dative. Same with here. You have a choice here between nouns and adjective, and clearly that's a noun. Later, we have already talked about, you want the adjective, singular, neuter, accusative. He came, again, we have two identical forms. I don't know why. It's the morphological tool is acting up. It doesn't matter. From, ek, comes from ek. That's straightforward. Athena, Atheni. We already added the noun, so he's good. Echo, we already talked about. Nous is going to be the plural feminine accusative, and then oligos, the same. So we've got them all labeled nicely. Now what's the next step? For me, the next step is relation. So if you go here, this is where we can add the different labels. So again, explore a little bit. So here's our choices. We're using the Prague tag set. You can actually change your tag set to whatever your book uses or something, a Smythe tag set or something. But this is an international tag set that's used that we call the Prague tag set. It's very simple. There aren't that many choices, and it means that when I annotate my trees, someone else can annotate trees in a different language, and you can use the same tag set and therefore make comparisons. So let's go through these labels quickly. There are a couple of sets of guidelines that you can look at. I'll give you links to about how to use these, but meanwhile, let's just talk about them. Predicate simply means the main verb of the sentence. That's simple enough. Often there are two main verbs of the sentence. So if I click on that, it'll show up on this box. If there are two main verbs, you would make them predcos, right? If they're hanging on a chi, and you would make them coordinated. You can make them a positive, or you can make them a positive and coordinated. And then to make that word label that way, you'd hit apply, but that's not what this belongs. So I want to say unselect oligos, select elthane. That's the main verb of my sentence. So I'm going to, there's many ways I can label it. One is I can fix the top box here and then say apply. That's an extra step if you've only got one word. If you've only got one word, what you want to do is either just fill it in its box here, or come over here and right click on it and you can fill it in here, and you don't have to go over to this box. It's a matter of what you want to do. I do a mix of them. And then you got to hit escape to get it unselected. Now, the subject of the sentence. Let's click on him. He's clearly the subject of the sentence, and that's what subject means, right? Subject of the sentence, subject of any verb. A participle, an infinitive, a conjugated verb, it doesn't matter. And again, it can be coordinated, or it can be a positive, or it can be both. He's clearly just the plain old subject, so we're good there. Direct object. Well, clearly having ships, there's an object. It can be the object of any verb, obviously. It can be direct object, indirect object. What it needs to be is a necessary argument. We're talking about valency here. This is called dependency syntax that we're using. And if a verb always takes a dative, that's the object. If a verb takes a dative and a genitive, those are both objects. Generally speaking, if you've got more than two objects, we've got a problem. Some people think you can have more than two, but generally, no, you can't have more than two, so you have to make some decisions. Having ships, that's clearly an object, so let's label that as object. I would argue that coming out of Athens is probably a necessary argument as well, and that's kind of up in the air. It doesn't make sense to say coming without some additional information. So I would argue that out of Athens is also an object. Certainly, if this had been Elthane, then I would have no problem at all making that an object. If there's a preposition as a prefix of the verb and then repeated, that's pretty much generally an object. Place to which is usually an object, but it depends on the verb. If it's a verb of coming or if it's a verb of going, right? This is something you get a feel for. All right, what's next? See what else is on here. So we've talked about these. Attribute is simply adjectives modifying nouns, generally speaking, and that includes any articles. So polis is one. I'm going to hit control and hit oligos as well, and then label them all in one box here as attribute, sorry, and then hit apply, and now they're both selected, and I need to hit escape again to get out of there. Hoosterone is an adverb later. Things modifying an adverb are also adverbs. So later by days, those are both adverbs. So I'm selecting those and labeling them as adverbs. Now, after these things is an adverbial phrase, so we'll label that. And so is this circumstantial participle. It's not an attributive participle. It's not a necessary description to the noun. So these are both adverbs as well. So we'll label them both adverbs. Notice we have prepositions, and this is where this fourth box up here, selector, can be useful. You can select by label. And the only two labels that I find are useful to select for are coordinators, where you've got to be a little careful because it will bring up both coordinators like kai and te, but it will also bring up subordinating clauses, so hoties and things like that. But what's really useful is aux p. Aux p is how you label prepositions. So you put that in. Sorry, that's if you're going to search by label. So I'm getting you confused now. So I can say search by object, and it will list everything I labeled as objects. If you go up here and put in ADP for prepositions, this is what you want. It will give you all the prepositions in the sentence. And notice the sentence is sentence dash word. So each word here has a number. Each sentence has a number. So once you've gotten the prepositions identified, selected for you, and sometimes it can be 10 or 12 of them, go back to relation and label them all at once. So we talked about the first ones. Auxiliary is mostly punctuation. So aux x is a comma. Aux k is an end of sentence punctuation. Aux g is used for parentheses. Aux r we don't bother with. It's for reflexives, and it's not really necessary in Greek. Aux v is when you have an auxiliary verb, much more useful in Latin, but occasionally shows up in Greek with verbal adjectives. Aux p is a preposition. Sorry, I've lost it again. Aux p is the prepositions. They never change. They're always prepositions. Aux c is any Word introducing a subordinate clause. So the hoties, the whens, the sinces, the whiles, all that. Aux y and aux z are for adverbs. Aux y are for what are called sentence adverbs. So de here is a sentence adverb. It modifies the whole sentence. The postpositives are generally sentence adverbs. So I'm going to label that aux y. Then there's this other thing which are kind of subcategories of adverbs, aux z's. These are the negations, are all aux z. If you use kai as also, it's an aux z. If you use malista to emphasize a word, it's an aux z. So I'm going to label this one aux z as a word adverb, as it were. Notice you also have coordinators for kais and tes. ATV, I'll talk about later, and that. Penom, we already talked about. Penom is simply what it sounds like. The book is red. Ocomp is if you make someone something. So if they elect him general, him is going to be the object, general is going to be the ocomp. So if the verb action is creating a double accusative kind of thing. A positive is to label usually the comma that creates the appositive. EXD is for external dependency. So this is for things that are stuck in the sentence that don't belong, such as vocatives, which you generally hang on the main verb, or if they add exclamations by Zeus, that's going to be an EXD. Things like that that just don't belong in the rest of the sentence. So those are basically all your labels. That's all your choices. And what I'm going to do is go through the first few sentences of the Hellenica and show you how to use these on a case-by-case basis because it's easier than just reading instructions in my book. But meanwhile, you have this finished tree. You want to hit save. If you don't hit save and you try to leave through this exit button here, it will say, wait a minute, are you sure you want to leave? You've got unsaved material. So make sure you save it before you leave and go out to Perseids. And now you've done your first sentence. I'm going to continue on with some more of these sentences in future videos and show you how to do some rudimentary editing of the XML and other ways to upload files. So I hope you stay along for the ride.